It's curtains on a political drama that began on the 20th of June when senior Sena leader and minister Eknath Shinde left for Surat in Gujarat with other Sena MLAs. Over the days, the number of his supporters grew manifold. By the end of it, he had most of the elected Shiv Sena MLAs with him, 39 in all. The rebels over these last 10 days moved from Surat to Guwahati, a short pit stop in Goa, and will return to Mumbai tomorrow, triumphant. In these 10 days, the political face of Maharashtra, the legacy of the Thackeray's, and the future of the Shiv Sena has been thrown into a tailspin. A short while ago, Uddhav Thackeray, on a live Facebook post, resigned from his position as Chief Minister of the state. This comes minutes after a Supreme Court decision upheld the Maharashtra governor's order late last night to hold a floor test at 11 a.m. tomorrow. Now, the Maha Vikas Aghadi government, formed with a combination of the Shiv Sena, the NCP and the Congress, was always a political experiment. How could the Shiv Sena, whose brand of politics is Hindutva, join up with the Congress and the NCP? There was one aim that all three had: to keep the BJP out. That aim has been dispelled today. We're bringing you live coverage, analysis, and the biggest voices on the story as it unfolds. You have to stay with us this evening. But first, let me go across to Shweta, my colleague, who is now at the BJP camp where it's celebrations all around. Ketan is joining us to tell us what's happening in the Shiv Sena camp, and it seems quite deserted there. And I'm also going to Sandeep to ask him about what next as far as the political process is concerned. But first, Shweta, we can see celebrations all around there in the BJP camp. So all of these days, the BJP, remember, has been saying very clearly they had nothing to do with the Shinde rebellion. No one's pretending anymore, are they?
Absolutely. It's a massive victory for them, as they have been claiming that this was in need of an hour and it had to happen one day, and this has taken place. Let me quickly show you 360-degree visuals from this particular hall in the Taj President Hotel. Wherever my camera can go, whatever face my camera can capture, it's all about BJP MLAs, top-notch ministers and MPs around from all across Maharashtra. Huge day for BJP in Maharashtra, as they were waiting for this day since 2019. And today is the day. There's Nitesh Rane, there's Atul Bhatkalkar, there's Prasad Lad. Everyone is present here, and there is a huge sense of celebration. Let me quickly show you some other visuals.
Shweta, get us to speak to them. And let's listen into what they're saying.
Sir, बहुत बड़ी विक्ट्री है आपके लिए, क्या कहना चाहेंगे भाजपा के लिए?
देखिए, अभी 2.5 साल पहले जो चीज होनी चाहिए थी वो 1-2 दिन में होने वाले। श्री देवेंद्र जी फडणवीस मुख्यमंत्री के तौर पे शपथ विधि ग्रहण करेंगे, और जो 2.5 साल से इस महाराष्ट्र की जनता की जो हालत खराब हुई, उसका पूरा जो भी कोई बैकलॉग है वो पूरा भरने का काम देवेंद्र जी के नेतृत्व में हो जाएगा। किसान लोगों का, कामगार लोगों का, वंचित लोगों का जो भी अफरा तफर हो गई, उसको रुकावट आ जाए।
नायक साहब, आप हमेशा से नवी मुंबई का बहुत बड़ा हिस्सा रहे हैं। अब रेजिग्नेशन के पहले जैसे ही कैबिनेट मीटिंग खत्म हुई, उसमें बताया गया कि नवी मुंबई में इंटरनेशनल एयरपोर्ट बन रहा है जिसका नाम बाला साहब ठाकरे के ऊपर नहीं, जबकि डीबी पाटिल के ऊपर रखा जाएगा। बड़ा फैसला था, इसको कैसे देखते हैं?
डीबी पाटिल प्रकल्पग्रस्त लोगों का नेता था और उन्होंने बहुत लोगों के लिए आंदोलन किए थे, तो वो इंटरनेशनल एयरपोर्ट को डीबी पाटिल का नाम देना ही उचित था। उन्होंने उसको कबूल किया, अच्छा है उनके लिए।
आखिरी में बस ये पूछना चाहूंगी, कल क्या होने वाला है? आज रात भर जश्न होने वाला है, मुझे लग रहा है आज कोई ताज प्रेसिडेंट से जाने वाला नहीं है घर। कल क्या होने वाला है?
नहीं, देखिए, आज न कल देवेंद्र फडणवीस जी को माननीय राज्यपाल महोदय बुलाएंगे और उनका शपथ विधि हो जाएगा।
As man of the moment,
where is the man of the moment? Where is Mr. Fadnavis?
See, just a short while back, in fact, we showed you the visual where Devendra Fadnavis was eating sweets, celebrating the moment, and that was the moment where he was present. But just now we have heard from Prasad that he has went to eat, but as of now we find so many people around here. Let us quickly go to Prasad Ladji also. We'll hear from him also that what kind of celebration they are planning to do, as that's a massive victory. They are seeing this around, and as many as BJP MLAs were here. It was already directed to them all across Maharashtra. All 106 MLAs had to be present. Since evening, people started coming, and since evening, Mirror now has been reporting this. We'll just talk to them as well, but at the same time, we are seeing so many people around here. So many voices are also coming here. We'll just quickly ask them, sir, कितनी खुशी का दिन है? कितना खुशी का दिन है सर आज? इतना खुशी का दिन है सर, आप एक दूसरे को माइक पकड़ा रहे हैं. खैर, well, you know, when it comes to the celebration, we have seen that all the BJP MLAs went down the hotel. They celebrated.
Right. So we are definitely seeing that picture, and it's quite a contrast. While there is that picture of celebration coming in from the Taj President Hotel in Mumbai, as Shweta had mentioned, we also have on the other side no clarity on what's happening in the Shiv Sena camp. You know, completely we have to see whether tomorrow there will be a floor test at all. Meenakshi is also joining me today. It was a big day for the courts. Meenakshi, at the end of the day, once the Chief Minister has resigned, will there even be a floor test?
Well, you know, Tamanna, that is what Uddhav Thackeray has sought to do. Remember, if he did not have the numbers, and after the Supreme Court passed its orders in very clear-cut terms asking him to face the floor test, it would have been a very embarrassing position. So therefore, you know, we at Mirror now were in the know from sources close to Uddhav Thackeray when the matter was being argued that the orders of the Supreme Court would be very contingent to determine fate or the next course of action that now incumbent and after resignation former Chief Minister Maharashtra Uddhav Thackeray would do. Because what is at stake here? It is the legacy and the mantle of Balasaheb Thackeray, which Eknath Shinde claims that now he is the rightful heir to, and we all know Uddhav Thackeray is the you know, heir apparent when he was there, when Balasaheb Thackeray was alive and at the helm of affairs of
I'm going
Shiv
to
Sena.
come back to you. I'm going to come back to you, but I'm joined now by Mr. PDT Achari. And I think it's important to understand the what happens next part of the story, even as we continue to get updates from all of our reporters on the ground. Mr. Achari is one of the foremost constitutional experts in the country. Mr. Achari, thank you for joining us this evening on Beyond the Headline as we break down all of these fast-paced political developments in quick speed. Now, once the Chief Minister resigns, does the floor test become infructuous tomorrow?
Yes, certainly. Because once the Chief Minister resigns, then what remains? There is no need for floor test. Floor test is meant for the Chief Minister to prove his majority. And if the Chief Minister himself has resigned, there is no question of proving anything. That means the government is out. And a new government will take office within a short period.
So, now, how does this process work? Will we now have the governor make the next move where the governor will invite the next largest party or the single largest party, which in this case is the BJP, to come and form the government?
Yes. Now, governor will be certainly asking the leader of the opposition whether he is in a position to form the government. And if he says that he is in a position to form the government, then governor has to see whether he has the requisite number. And then if the governor is satisfied that he has the requisite number, he can certainly swear him in as the Chief Minister, and then he will ask him to prove his majority on the floor of the House, which he will have to do, and some time will be given to him for that purpose.
So now what happens in this case to the Shinde camp. So far, we've been calling them the rebels, the Shinde Sena, etc. Today, even as Uddhav Thackeray resigned, one point he made very clearly is that I am the Shiv Sena and no one can take that away from me. So now, who exactly is going to be supporting the BJP? Because the BJP by itself doesn't have the numbers. They will need these MLAs to support them.
No, these MLAs, the rebel MLAs are there to support him.
But who are they? Are they supporting them as Shiv Sena? Are they going to join the BJP? How will it work from here, sir?
No, actually, you know, they are members of the Shiv Sena. They have not merged with any other party, or they have not formed a third party after merger. So that has not happened. Therefore, they will be counted as members of the Shiv Sena. That is the thing. And now when the new government, after the new government takes office, they have to come before the House and prove their majority. Now then, the Shiv Sena led by Uddhav Thackeray, he will issue the whip. And he will issue the whip to all these members, including these dissidents. And if the dissidents support the government against the direction of the Shiv Sena, then naturally Shiv Sena can file a petition with the Speaker to disqualify them.
All right. So
that will happen. That can happen.
So am I understanding that this is not necessarily the end of the story? Because if Uddhav Thackeray today says that I am the Shiv Sena, 39 MLAs who have fought and won on the Shiv Sena symbol says we want to support Devendra Fadnavis, but Uddhav Thackeray doesn't, the party per se doesn't, then how does it go forward? This is going to get interesting. Shekhar Iyer also joining us on the show, even as we're showing you these live visuals coming in. Shekhar Iyer, in terms of the political fallout, you know, we've heard the reactions from the BJP camp today, and many of them are saying that what should have happened 2.5 years ago has essentially happened today. The mandate was for the BJP and the Sena. This is going to be possibly a government of the BJP and some version of the Sena. But now what about this split within the Sena? What are the repercussions we're going to see there?
Well, you know, there were too many contradictions right from the beginning, and those contradictions could not be contained. And you can see even the last cabinet decision, which I'm not sure whether the NCP or the Congress were very happy, the renaming of Aurangabad, the renaming of Osmanabad, which all goes to show that somewhere along there was a problem with the way Sena was seen as being far away from its core ideology.
Right. No, but my question is now what happens to the future of the Shiv Sena? The question of who is the Shiv Sena still remains, isn't it, Shekhar?
Definitely. This is going to be the other battle, because these rebels are claiming they are the real Shiv Sena. So this battle is going to be there, that between what is called Uddhav Thackeray headed Shiv Sena and now Eknath Shinde, who says that he is the real Balasaheb, Shiv Sena. So this is going to be another battle which will involve this. But I think right now the focus is on what happens, because the first thing that has to happen is Uddhav Thackeray has to go and submit his resignation, because he has only announced his resignation. The second stage would be, just as Acharya ji was saying, for the governor to, accept the resignation and then look at ways of forming, to see whether there is a scope for an alternative government. And then the question comes whether these people, the opposition, particularly the BJP and these rebels, are they going to the Raj Bhavan and make a stake claim? Because in this situation,
I'm joined now by Mahesh Tapase, senior lawyer, and of course, someone who's been guiding the BJP all through this. Mr. Tapase, thank you so much for speaking with us on Beyond the Headline on what is a very, very big day. A precedent set there by what the Supreme Court has decided today, because the question at the end of it was that when there is a disqualification disqualification threat hanging on the head of a certain number of MLAs, can they vote in a floor test? Of course, it's now become moot because the Chief Minister has resigned. But is there now legal clarity on that question, and has a precedent been set?
No, I think the precedent was set long time back by a constitutional bench decision, which the lawyers on our side argued today. So I would just say it's a reaffirmation of precedents already set today.
All right. Now, as far as forming the government is concerned, sir, now one assumes that the next logical step will be that the governor would invite the single largest party, the BJP in this case. They will still need support. The Shinde Sena will be giving that support, but they are still the Shiv Sena. How will that work out when you have Uddhav Thackeray saying, I am the Shiv Sena?
You know, this argument is based on a false premise. And I'll tell you what that premise is, because it's been repeatedly mouthed by almost every press person that I've spoken to. The Constitution does not recognize parties. The Constitution recognizes a person who commands a majority on the floor of the House. That person is then made the Chief Minister, right? That Chief Minister actually can constitute his majority across party lines. Whether those people who fall in line with him then fall foul of the 10th schedule is altogether a different question. They may take out defection proceeding, etc. But the governor, when he searches for a chief minister, he looks for a person who commands the majority of legislators in the House. And that person becomes the chief minister. So somebody will stake the claim tomorrow because the incumbent government's head, who was entrusted with the task of forming the government, i.e. Uddhav Thackeray, has now resigned. He's no longer in the battle. So the governor will search for that person who commands the majority. And in all probability, given the numbers, across party lines, it will be Devendra Fadnavis.
Now, so will the question then come down the line, sir, that these 39 MLAs that Eknath Shinde today says support him, and one assumes will support Devendra Fadnavis as well, which party do they represent? Which symbol have they fought on? Is that the question of the 10th schedule, is that one yet to come?
No, that question is now moot. Look, as to who is the real Shiv Sena, that is the party with the constitution, whether it's given one, I don't know. Whether there is a constitution of that party submitted to the election commission, I do not know. But who succeeds to really, the name Shiv Sena and the symbol of the bow and arrow, right, is now a matter to be determined by the election commission, right? As far as the disqualification issue is concerned, I think this judgment has overtaken it, because there will be now a new government, right? And undoubtedly that new government will choose a new speaker. So the present deputy speaker, mind you, there was no speaker since Nana Patole resigned, right? The new government will have a new speaker. The present deputy speaker, who was presiding as speaker, will cease to hold office if he is voted out. So all those questions about disqualification which are pending will be overtaken by the fact that the primary task of determining a new government will first take place, and that new government will then, through its supporters, elect a new speaker.
So the question of whether the Shiv Sena wants to disqualify the 16 MLAs or not now is irrelevant, you're saying, 11 July, and that hearing does not any longer matter?
According to me, it has practically lost its sting. Yes.
I want to ask you a larger question now, Mr. Jethmalani, apart from everything that was discussed in court and the politics, etc. And this is what people are taking away from here. The role of constitutional figures, in this case, the Speaker and the Governor. In the process of arguments, questions were raised about the intent of the actions of both these constitutional figures. And do you think that that's a larger issue that will persist even after the dust blows over from this political episode?
Well, look, the the anti-defection law has its pros and cons. And so long as people switch allegiances, party allegiances, right? Yes, the two authorities who are basically vested by the Constitution with the powers to decide the formation of a government, right? And the question of disqualification, respectively, right? Which also impinges on the formation of a government, are going to be the governor and the speaker. They are the constitutional designated authorities for those functions. Therefore, they will always be mired in controversy. But it behoves everybody, including lawyers who argue in court, right, not to cast serious aspersions. But if you were to take this present case, right, the governor, according to me, has acted scrupulously according to law, right? There's no doubt, whatever anybody might say and whatever might have been argued in court, there is no doubt that there were serious questions about the viability of the MVA government in view of Eknath Shinde's actions and the support which he was able to garner amongst the Shiv Sena, right? Given that the majority of Uddhav Thackeray's government was in doubt, and the governor did what the law mandates him to do, which is to have a floor test and let the numbers be counted. Uddhav Thackeray's government was trying to avoid that mandate and that test. The government, today the Supreme Court bench put paid to that attempt.
I'm going to reiterate that question and put it even more simply, and pardon me if it's blunt. I'm not only talking about this particular case, but I'm saying that people who have been consuming this political story minute by minute and may have different views on whatever question have now come to the assumption that the speaker and the deputy speaker in this case would behave a certain way because he originally belongs to a certain party, and the governor would behave a certain way because he's been put in that position eventually by a certain party. That's the general feeling people have. I think it's important for us to clarify that how do we ensure people have faith in the actions of these constitutional positions, no matter which parties they belong to?
By not listening to tendentious press reports, which tend to make everything partisan.
But isn't the behavior sometimes partisan? Can it not be partisan? How do we ensure it isn't?
The behavior is partisan because political parties are involved. So behavior is going to be partisan. But if you're telling me, was the governor partisan in this case? Look, you may have governors who are partisan, but we have to go, and you can't avoid that. You cannot avoid that, right? The Constitution expects the governments to be above party politics. In practice, they are not, right? But in this case, if you are asking me, and we have to go on a case by case, I can't make generalizations. I don't make generalizations. I don't want to create a cynical perception like many in the press do about our political system. It exists. No system is perfect, but our democratic system and what we have envisaged by the Constitution is as perfect a system as you can get.
So if the governor is absolutely not partisan, can we then presume that the deputy speaker would have behaved in a partisan fashion?
Everybody, first of all, you know, that question is a little tendentious in itself. Let me tell you something. In a sense, everybody who's involved in public life is not partisan, right? We all strive to be as fair as we can and be as non-partisan, but it doesn't happen. So don't expect higher codes of conduct from people with constitutional responsibilities, though often they are less partisan than the general public.
One last question, Mr. Jethmalani, because I know you have a very busy evening, but this is an important one. Can we safely assume that there is no point of a floor test tomorrow? Right? Mr. Thackeray has resigned, so there will be now no floor test. Is that a correct interpretation?
No. That's a very safe assumption because a floor test is for the incumbent chief minister to prove his majority. By resigning, a white flag has been put up by Uddhav Thackeray, I might say at long last, mercifully. And that white flag is an indication that he doesn't want to face the floor test. He realizes he doesn't have the majority and that they were striving to contrive a majority, which they failed.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jethmalani. Always a pleasure to speak with you, and especially on a big day like today. Mr. Jethmalani, Mahesh Jethmalani there, answering all the questions. He was the legal eagle for Team Fadnavis, which is definitely leaving with a victory. You're seeing those victory visuals there on your screen. Now, you know, something very important to understand about Mr. Fadnavis. For him, this moment is very, very precious. He will be known as the comeback king of Indian politics, because remember, 2.5 years ago, he landed up to be sworn in as chief minister, but could not really make it to the position, and was the butt of many memes on social media, etc. It has been a tough time for him. Shekhar, just very quickly, if you can take us through what this means for Mr. Fadnavis. I mean, he's waited for his turn. And of course, the post-mortem will include questions on whether this was done ethically, was it moral, who paid for all of those private jets and many, many days in five-star hotels for all of these MLAs, etc. All of those questions will definitely be asked. But in the now, in this particular moment, this is a clear political victory, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely, because right from the beginning, you know, these parties had contested the election. It was a pre-poll alliance. Prime Minister Narendra Modi had campaigned for them. Several Sena MLAs had sought Modi to campaign in their constituencies. Modi's picture was used in all these in their campaign. So therefore, you know, it was a joint campaign, and Prime Minister had campaigned heavily for this alliance, though they had problems in whether they should stay together or separate and all that. Now, after that, what happened was, soon after the results came, the Uddhav Thackeray insisted on CM's post. So there was a problem over that, and Uddhav Thackeray wanted to make his son Aditya Thackeray to become chief minister, which was not acceptable to BJP, and BJP said there was no such agreement. Now, given that scenario, now Sharad Pawar steps in, and Sharad Pawar, mind you, had met the Prime Minister. Sharad Pawar was also negotiating with BJP. He had met the Prime Minister in Delhi in the month of October. And at the same time, we saw that Ajit Pawar was also in touch with BJP leaders. We have to remember that episode. Now, both Sharad Pawar and Ajit Pawar are negotiating on the behalf of NCP. But suddenly, you know, Sharad Pawar sees an opportunity. Why not take on board Uddhav Thackeray himself, so that we gain more leverage in a government that keeps out BJP. So this was all political maneuvers that we saw. And then you had that overnight drama of Ajit Pawar coming out and getting himself sworn in along with Devendra Fadnavis in the early hours, which became a very controversial. And subsequent to that, then Ajit Pawar went back to his uncle, Sharad Pawar. We have seen all those dramas. But today the problem is, Tamanna, the Sena legislators find that when the civic elections are coming, in whether it is Brihan Mumbai election or Pune election or Nasik election or you know, any big elections, civic elections are coming, there is a fear that, you know, by joining hands with NCP and Congress, the Sena may not get the votes of its core base.
Shekhar, this might be you know, a little too late. But then 2.5 years, there were no fears.
No, because the civic elections were kept on postponing.
Yeah.
See,
so,
the problem.
Two things. One is they were okay with this combination for 2.5 years. Second point is that if that was political drama, this is also political drama. This is a state which is seeing a lot of political drama. My point specifically is on Devendra Fadnavis and how for him politically to claw back was imperative. He is the one who landed up at Raj Bhavan and had to eventually not become chief minister.
You see, Tamanna, for Devendra Fadnavis, the situation is a turnaround on two accounts. He has, you know, managed to overcome the challenge within the BJP to his leadership. Please remember that in the last 2.5 years, there were several BJP leaders who were questioning his leadership of the opposition. In fact, suggestions were made that if the BJP central leadership had not insisted on Devendra Fadnavis as becoming chief minister again, perhaps we could have worked out another arrangement. All these talk was there. But that is, both the Prime Minister as well as the party stood behind Devendra Fadnavis, and Devendra Fadnavis' own conduct as the leader of the opposition in the last 2.5 years has borne food for him, because he started exposing the scams, he started exposing the irregularities. Then came that big expose about the former Home Minister, Anil Deshmukh, and at the story of, you saw senior IPS officers and coming out saying that they were forced to collect money. You had the episode of Vaze. All these things contributed to the image problem of this Aghadi. And Sena people realized that they could not bear this. And also, don't forget, when the case started against Nawaz Malik and so-called underworld connections about money being used for buying property, all this became an issue for the Sena legislators vis-a-vis their rank and file, because they realized that this MVA was sinking more and more into such stories. So that became a problem for these people.
Shiv Sena, we should get updates on that. What happens next for the Shiv Sena? What's the political future of the Shiv Sena? I'm going to take a very short break, but we'll come back with that side of the story. Okay, the government is gone, the MVA is gone. Remember, Uddhav Thackeray in his speech at 9:30 in this evening said, I have no problem with losing the chair. I left Varsha and moved to Mato 3 days ago. But what happens to his claim on his father's legacy? We're coming back with that angle after this break. Welcome back. You're watching Beyond the Headline. It's a day of huge political upheaval in Maharashtra. We've spoken in detail about what it means for Devendra Fadnavis. Now let's look at what it means for Mr. Uddhav Thackeray. Mr. Uddhav Thackeray is the scion of Bala Saheb Thackeray. The Shiv Sena has been one of the most prominent parties of Maharashtra, Sons of the Soil Party, a party that has had the political ideology of Hindutva and has teamed with the BJP for several decades. In fact, they were one of their oldest allies. This alliance broke up during the last Maharashtra elections because of a feeling that Uddhav Thackeray had that at that point that he would not survive with the BJP. He broke off. He wanted the chief minister's position. The BJP was not willing to relent. And then you had a situation where he joined hands with the NCP and the Congress. In fact, I have Mahesh Tapase of the NCP with me on the phone line today. Mr. Tapase, good evening, and thank you for speaking with us on this big day on Beyond the Headline. We have all the newsmakers on the show this evening. What does this mean for the future of your party? Is the MVA now a story that is over, even for future elections? Is that combination, which was a political experiment, one that has failed?
Good evening, Tamanna, and thank you for inviting me on your show. Let me tell you that we have supported the Shiv Sena throughout, and once again, we see, as we have seen in history a lot of times, that the closest man of the king, the closest lieutenant, has brought the citadel down. So this is exactly what has happened with the Shiv Sena. I think Mr. Shinde was one of the closest confidante of Uddhav Thackeray, and he has got the entire citadel down. So now, like I was listening to Mr. Mahesh Tapase also, there are some unanswered questions, like whose whip will be ultimately applicable to the rebel Shiv Sena enemies, and how does Mr. Devendra Fadnavis, who today claims 128, will actually show the mark, go above the mark of 145. So the current Shiv Sena, along with the rebel, is like 55. We are 53, and Congress is 44. So that means we are 152. If the rebels call themselves the Shiv Sena, and if at all, as per the latest court ruling, nothing has changed as far as the chief whip of the Shiv Sena is concerned. It is still Sunil Prabhu, because he was there right from beginning. So now, who and how who will vote, how it will be done, is all speculative. We just hope that democracy is not sacrificed for the want of power. And let's hope that whatever is best in the interest of Maharashtra state, that will happen.
Stay on with me, Mr. Tapase. I'm also speaking with Pinki Anand, former Additional Solicitor General. She's also on the show this evening. Ms. Anand, thank you so much for speaking with us on a day when it's important to understand the implications of what we've just witnessed. We've had the role of the governor where he's called for a floor test. The Supreme Court upheld that decision. The Chief Minister has then resigned. All of this has happened in the last 24 hours. And perhaps one of the biggest questions that comes forth from it is that when Mr. Devendra Fadnavis does stake claim, because that's no longer a question of if, it's a question of when, and he's backed by all of these MLAs, who exactly are these MLAs? Are they rebel MLAs? Are they Shinde Sena MLAs? Can they continue to claim to represent the Shiv Sena? How would you look at that question?
See, the question is, I think the first and foremost question is in a democracy, the true test of any democracy of finding who the majority is and who should lead the state is a matter of floor test. And that has been established way over. And the factor that the Supreme Court has upheld the floor test is the most significant part of it, to say, let the floor test go on, let people prove their majority, because in a democracy, the people who lead will be decided by the people who are ultimately voting, and the floor test will determine that. As far as which is the true party and which is not the true party, there's no question on that. As things stand today, you do have a position whereby you are having a large cross-section of the MLAs who are supporting Eknath Shinde in his move in this effort. And ultimately, the question of who the party belongs to, there's no belonging to anybody. It is ultimately the largest electorate within the party which decides who the party is with in the sense of leadership. So it's all to do with the people who have been there, the MLAs who decided that Eknath Shinde would lead them. And therefore, the original, so to say, Shiv Sena with Mr. Thackeray has been reduced to a minority. And the people to represent are people. The party remains what it is. The party doesn't change face. The party is an electorally recognized organization, and therefore it will remain there. But who will represent the party?
My question, ma'am, is if 39 of Shiv Sena MLAs support Mr. Devendra Fadnavis and other MLAs, the rest who have fought and won on the same symbol, do not support this government, how does that work? Is this government then a BJP plus Sena, BJP plus some MLAs? What is this government then?
See, the question is, I think right now we can't keep hazarding guesses as to what it might be. But if the ultimate numbers are there, it is the majority which is representing. What the composition within the parties will be, that is for the parties to decide. That is for the Shiv Sena, for the BJP to decide who may lead, who may be the chief minister, who may be otherwise representative of the party. But that's another matter. As far as the party is concerned, the decision of majority is on the floor, and the question of interstate parties or the coalitions, if any, or the support, if any, is to be decided by the parties and how they structure themselves. And that has to be left to the parties.
What happens on 11 July, ma'am? Does that matter now at all? Because that's the question of what about these 16 quote-unquote rebel MLAs? Is that now moot?
Well, ultimately, the Supreme Court has said that the decision which it has made today will be subject to the decision and the hearing on July 11th, which means on July 11th, whatever may be decided in terms of disqualification move that has been made against the so-called rebel MLAs will be decided on 11th of July. So it could have a bearing, because ultimately, if the numbers are not there and they stand disqualified and therefore they don't have a right to vote, the position could be somewhat different. But really speaking, as far as things stand today, you do have the Supreme Court categorically saying go ahead with the floor test. And rest assured that in a democracy, this has to be done, and it has been done in the past. There are too many precedents on this respect, and the Sarkaria Commission, which ultimately held that the true test is on the floor.
So will that true test be one that Mr. Devendra Fadnavis will also have to ultimately face?
Might have to. We can't predict anything in advance, but it all depends on certain factors, which you have enumerated some of them, and there could always arise exigencies. So you can never rule out what may or may not be faced by any political leader in the country.
Thank you so much, Ms. Pinki Anand. Mahesh Tapase also with us, NCP leader. Mr. Tapase, is this, and I asked you that question in the beginning, but you started with your overall comments, I think. Will this combination still survive after this? What happens next for this Congress, NCP, Shiv Sena combination? All right, we'll try and get back to Mr. Tapase, but Sandeep is joining me. He's at Raj Bhavan, where we have just seen the close aide of Uddhav Thackeray, Milind Narvekar, arrive a short while ago. Sandeep, what's the latest from there?
See, Milind Narvekar, the personal secretary of Maharashtra Chief Minister and Shiv Sena Chief Uddhav Thackeray have just arrived out here at Raj Bhavan, and he has just entered out here with the Shiv Sena leader, Miss Neelam Gore was there with him, and few more Sena leaders were there with Milind Narvekar, and in fact he will be physically giving the letter of resignation of Maharashtra Chief Minister Uddhav Thackeray to Maharashtra Governor. So definitely a big jolt for Maha, Vikas, Aghadi government out here, and it is being said that Devendra Fadnavis, BJP leader Devendra Fadnavis, is likely to arrive out here at Raj Bhavan in some while and will be meeting Maharashtra Governor. So a lot of action is expected out here from Raj Bhavan. Remember the drama that has taken place since the last few days, and now Maharashtra Chief Minister has tendered his resignation, and it was Milind Narvekar who came out here and is inside, in fact, to meet Maharashtra Governor, and will be giving the letter of resignation physically to Maharashtra Governor Bhagat Singh Koshyari. Remember, usually it's CM who comes out and issues the letter of resignation to the governor, but this time it is not Maharashtra Chief Minister who have physically visited. It is his personal secretary Milind Narvekar who has just come out here and has issued the letter of resignation on behalf of Maharashtra Chief Minister Uddhav Thackeray. The kind of things that have went through since last few days, it will be recorded in history, and definitely we can go in the flashback as how Maharashtra Chief Minister post was given to Uddhav Thackeray, how the NCP, Congress and Shiv Sena, which was never imagined to be in together, made the government. Shiv Sena broke up with BJP, and now in a while of 2.5 years, 2.5 years, in fact, Maharashtra Chief Minister loosed on with its own MLAs. So definitely a big jolt for Maha Vikas Aghadi government. But what we are hearing is that Devendra Fadnavis is likely to visit out here at Raj Bhavan.
No, so one minute. Sandeep, what is Mr. Fadnavis going there for right now? Because the process is, as we understand, now that Uddhav Thackeray has resigned, and I'm just going to take a second to tell our viewers this as well, because it's important to just make sense of everything that's happening very quickly. So yesterday, the governor at Raj Bhavan, where Sandeep is right now, said that there will be a floor test at 11 a.m. tomorrow. The Shiv Sena went to the court challenging this, and then you've had the Supreme Court upholding this decision. On the other hand, you had Mr. Uddhav Thackeray quickly choosing to resign after that decision came through.
Milind Narvekar, who had just went.
Yes. Yes, Sandeep, continue.
So it's not Narvekar. So it's not Narvekar.
All right.
So yes,
no, that's okay. That's okay, Sandeep. I understand the excitement of live reporting. So no problem. Take your time, look around, and then get us all the details. I was just recapping for our viewers everything that's happened. So now what's clear is that there's unlikely to be a floor test. There's no need for a floor test. Because Uddhav Thackeray has resigned. So he no longer has to prove his majority on the floor of the House. He clearly knows he doesn't have it. That's why he has resigned in advance. Now, the Speaker is supposed to call upon the single largest party, in this case, which is the BJP, led by Mr. Devendra Fadnavis in the state, to form the next government, which is why my question to you, Sandeep, you've told us, you've broken the story that Mr. Fadnavis will come shortly to Raj Bhavan. What will he come there to do?
See, as far as, Devendra Fadnavis' visit to Raj Bhavan is concerned, he is likely to come. So far, there is no official confirmation from Devendra Fadnavis or BJP's end. But if at all this meeting happens, it will be a Thanksgiving or it will be a courtesy meet by Devendra Fadnavis to Governor. Remember, the scenes of yesterday, how Devendra Fadnavis visited the governor and had demanded the floor test. As BJP has won the fight, or we can say governor has won the fight against the MVA government or the Shiv Sena today, the floor test was in fact ordered by the Supreme Court. Now there are chances that governor might have called Devendra Fadnavis to stake the claim as it is the largest party. But so far there is no confirmation from Raj Bhavan as well whether they have called up Fadnavis to stake the claim, to stake power. In fact, this could be the courtesy meet that could happen out here at Raj Bhavan, and in fact a lot of actions is expected in upcoming 2-3 days. Remember, if as Devendra Fadnavis is, BJP is in fact the largest party in the state of Maharashtra, and it claims that all the Eknath Shinde camp MLAs, those 39 MLAs, apart from that independence MLA, he has support of. There are chances, Eknath Shinde camp will be definitely supporting Devendra Fadnavis, and a lot of actions Devendra Fadnavis will be taking oath as the Chief Minister of Maharashtra, in fact, and portfolios will be distributed.
Thanks for that, Sandeep. Keep an eye on when he
Shinde
comes in and let us know, Sandeep. They're reporting from outside Raj Bhavan. I want to play out for you this picture. Let me see if we can pull it up. From November 26, 2019. It's going to be iconic in terms of what we're going to be seeing in the next few days. November 26, 2019 was when Devendra Fadnavis went to the Raj Bhavan, made that journey to the Raj Bhavan, and had the support of Ajit Pawar, the nephew of Sharad Pawar. He had managed to pull him over to his side to form the government. And those dreams did not come true at that point. That's exactly the moment that gave birth to the Maha Vikas Aghadi government. For long, it was called a political experiment that could not last. But remember, it is a government that managed and governed Maharashtra through the COVID-19 period, through a lot of trials and tribulations. And it seemed to function for a while, but the innate ideological differences came to the fore. Now, were these spurred on by prodded on by help from the then opposition party, the BJP? That can be in the realm of speculation. But in the span of the last 10 days, the facade of that government has completely been dismantled. I'm going across to Shekhar. Shekhar Iyer is still with us. Now, Shekhar, is it safe to expect that the MVA, which is an alliance at the end of the day, will also cease to exist? Can Uddhav Thackeray still afford to be part of the MVA, or will he have to now strike out on his own?
Well, you have seen his last decisions as Chief Minister. He has again reaffirmed his Hindutva commitment by renaming the cities, which was opposed by both NCP and Congress. And the whole battle within the Sena is about this, about what happens to our core political ideology that was founded by Balasaheb Thackeray. Now, that is on one side. The other problem, I think, is, see, a lot of these MLAs and Sena leaders were unhappy with Uddhav Thackeray's style of functioning. That is a major issue which, forced these developments. Because this unhappiness with Uddhav Thackeray, being inaccessible to them, was shared also by the Congress. Let us remember that Congress ministers were themselves unhappy with the way things were going on. Of course, for the NCP, they had a powerful leader in Sharad Pawar who was always in touch with Uddhav Thackeray. So a lot of NCP issues could be sorted out by Sharad Pawar with Uddhav. But even Sharad Pawar had some reservations about Uddhav Thackeray's way of functioning. Now, those issues also played a big role, Tamanna. We have to remember that. And now the question is, now these people are saying that they are the real Shiv Sena, and whether Uddhav Thackeray has that energy in him at this moment to fight to get complete control of Shiv Sena, because he has also resigned as a member of the Legislative Council, which also shows his state of mind today. He is deeply anguished, deeply pained that his colleagues have left him. And as to what will happen in the future, we do not know whether all those 60 legislators who are now were backing till Uddhav Thackeray announced resignation, Are they still going to be with them, or they will join the others? So
No.
these are questions that are left open.
No, but I mean, my question is, it might be left open, but what about the party? The Shiv Sena as a party, Shekhar, and you know this well, is more than its MLAs. Its MLAs is but one part of it. It is about its shakhas. It's about its shakha pramukhs. It's about its ground workers. They are prepping for a BMC election coming next. So what happens to the rest of that machinery? Because that's the real fight, isn't it, for Uddhav Thackeray today?
Yeah, absolutely. But Tamanna, you saw all those bravado calls that were given out, threats of intimidation that were given out by Sanjay Raut did not actually reflect on the streets. The Sainiks did not come out in great support of Uddhav Thackeray. Of course, there were even shows of violence, some acts of violence to tell these rebel MLAs that they could fear the worst. But that is why they sought security. And they were provided security by the central government. Now, but with all that, you saw the rank and file have not exactly come out in great numbers. And today the streets of Mumbai are not flooded with Sainik workers, because there was already confusion among the Sainik rank and file. And after all,
but that's a double-edged sword. That's a double-edged sword. Uddhav Thackeray has called for peace. If the streets were flooded with Sainik workers, then you would be accusing him of spoiling law and order. Now that they're not flooded, you're saying he doesn't have support.
No, see, Tamanna, they were playing bad cop and good cop. You had Sanjay Raut giving out those threats of intimidation. Then you had Uddhav Thackeray, saying, come and meet me, come and meet me. So they were playing the good cop and bad cop.
What about the role of Sanjay Raut? What about the role of Sanjay Raut? Now, some of the reports that were doing the rounds was irking Shiv Seniks and could have prodded the rebellion, apart from maybe other factors that we don't know, whether it's threats, money, lure, power, whatever. But also what there was surely was unhappiness, reportedly about the role of Sanjay Raut, about the prominence that Aditya Thackeray had gotten. Do you think there will be any change in those factors now?
A lot of those equations can undergo change, because you are right, Tamanna, that there was a feeling, when Uddhav Thackeray was sounding more reconciliatory, wanted to talk to them. But you had Sanjay Raut day in and day out, making those statements, making those harsh criticisms, which exactly did not help in any way, Uddhav Thackeray gaining any ground, because that itself was very surprising. I was wondering, why is Uddhav Thackeray allowing this? If he really wants to reach out to his colleagues who are unhappy with him, then why did he get into this? Why is he allowing Sanjay Raut? Because Sanjay Raut was seen as the chief architect, a go-between Uddhav Thackeray and Sharad Pawar when this whole Aghadi was worked out. So that's why Sanjay Raut had a great clout in the party, no doubt. But subsequently we saw that apart from Sanjay Raut, you didn't have any other leaders from the Uddhav Thackeray camp coming and speaking to the media. He was the sole person.
I think one thing from Uddhav Thackeray's speech, which actually stood out for me as well, and I'm going to bring Ketan here. Ketan Vaidya, my colleague, has been tracking the story minute by minute for the last several days. Ketan, you're seeing the conclusion of it, and you're outside Matoshri. You've been tracking their stance through this. Remember in his speech when Uddhav said at the end, it was just 4 ministers left with me, and everyone else had left. I mean, at some point, a realization will have to dawn that he has to rethink his political strategy. And perhaps we saw glimpses on that in the decisions he made in his last cabinet meeting, the renaming of Aurangabad, of the airport in Navi Mumbai, etc.
Well, so those were, I think, symbolic decisions, Tamanna. But I still feel that all is not lost as yet. I mean, he may have lost the power, but the party organization is still intact. And I would humbly not agree with Mr. Shekhar Iyer that Shiv Seniks didn't turn up in huge numbers, because we saw in the last few days when Aditya Thackeray or Uddhav Thackeray approached the Shiv Seniks, they were there, and they have expressed their support in his leadership. Politics is the art of possible, and if we see this MVA experiment in that perspective, then there were many local body elections that the three together won. Now they are faced with a buoyant BJP. with a strong emergent BJP, with Devendra Fadnavis.
No, so what is possible right now, Ketan? Art of the possible, I agree, but what do you think is possible right now? I mean, what's the mood in the Sena camp? What are they saying in Matoshri? Because the fact is that seeing that he was going to lose the floor test, Uddhav Thackeray has resigned.
Well, the mood in the Sena camp is definitely morose. The body language that was there 3 days back, when there was still a glimmer of hope of some Sainiks returning back to the fold. So it is right now gloomy, it is morose, and they are sad at the fact that this non-controversial and uncharacteristic kind of CM, someone who was humble, who sounded like a family member, as many people called him, will no longer be at the helm of the affairs. But in the longer run, I think this is a good lesson learned for the Thackeray family as well as the Sena. In politics, you have to be accessible. One quality that Sharad Pawar is known for, that he can point out to his secretary whenever his helicopter is hovering around any village in Maharashtra about at least 5 karyakartas whom he knows by the first name. So this is what real politics is all about. And this is a good lesson in a way for the Thackeray's to
no, the question is what next? The question is what next, Ketan, because the Thackeray's now have to fight for their legacy. The Thackeray's have to fight for their legacy. Another thing that Uddhav Thackeray kept saying in his speech, that these rebel MLAs have pulled down the son of Bala Saheb Thackeray. He now has to reaffirm his identity as his father's son in Maharashtra politics and bring the cadre behind him. Is that going to be the focus in the job from tomorrow? Is, in that sense, tomorrow day 0 for them to start afresh, to get their flock behind them?
Yeah, so Uddhav Thackeray's last speech as the Chief Minister was indeed the first speech when you see the Shiv Sena's movement ahead. And he has made it clear that we gave power to common people, to rickshaw drivers. So he was making a veiled reference at Eknath Shinde's past. And he said that the common Shiv Seniks are not complaining, they are not unhappy, and they are still with me. So I think on one hand that, but what I feel is, again, there is a long stretch legal battle of what the real Shiv Sena is. And I've been listening to your program, Tamanna, and you asked all the 3 legal luminaries on your show about what will be the real Sena on the floor. Will it be the Eknath Shiv Sena, which the common Shiv Sainik doesn't recognize? There have been big rebellions in the party's history in the past, most notably in the 90s when Chhagan Bhujbal left the party with 18 MLAs.
But never like this. Never like this, where Uddhav Thackeray has to prove his own legacy. And I'm glad you raised that question, because Mahesh Jetmalani answered it quite clearly. He said that the governor will look at the support that the prospective chief minister will have. Can this individual drum up the support of enough MLAs? Doesn't matter what party they are from. That's a question and a fight for maybe a few days later. Thank you for that, Ketan. I'll take a very quick break, but as we wrap up this leg of our programming, I want to pull up that shot I was talking about. The date was November 26, 2019. Devendra Fadnavis and Ajit Pawar met the governor, Mr. Koshyari, and planned to form the Maharashtra government. But Sharad Pawar intervened and managed to turn that dream upside down. Will we see a redux? The players, most of them may have changed, but Mr. Devendra Fadnavis will be there, the governor will be there, and of course, Mr. Fadnavis would have been proven the comeback king. On that note, I'll wrap up this leg of our coverage, but it continues on Mirror Now. Stay with us.